choose to approach new opportunities in love, power, and sound mind, never in fear. Amen?
Amen.
Anybody feel that? You give me 2 snaps? All right. A few people did.
Thank you.
Well, welcome, LaTrease. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself? I know we just went through the bio, but just let us know why you're passionate specifically about love and relationships. And I know it's not just, we're not only talking about, romantic relationships, but just, from your own perspective.
Well, one, in the state of Virginia, I'm provisionally licensed relationship therapist, but internationally, I am a relationship specialist, meaning that I specialize in all relationships, and my favorite is your relationship with yourself. And I discovered this on my own journey to become not just a wife, because that just happened. Once I figured out how to discover the relationship with myself, I developed a strong relationship with myself, and then my life, I can just say, has gotten better and better since then. There's been this space of peace that's come, and I am so excited to share that with everyone. And I'm not the type of person to say, if I can do it, you can do it, because that's not true. It's whatever you can do and whatever you're willing to do, you can do it. I just want to share my experience personally and professionally. So I went and got my degree in couples counseling, and I actually wasn't supposed to be a couples counselor at first. I was supposed to be a marriage therapist, and then I stumbled upon relationship therapy, and that was some fans into something that I want to share with the rest of the world. So
on that note, we're just going to hop into a few questions that I think would be helpful for us to know. The first one is, what are some common misconceptions or barriers, however you want to put it, that make it hard for women to love? I think this is a really good question because, we all believe different things, different misconceptions that we have in our hearts. So what are some things that make it difficult, specifically for women? We're going to come back to the men, but specifically for women, what are some misconceptions that make that hard?
I like the questions that were coming up, because those are some of the misconceptions. I value the question about the fear of commitment, because a lot of times we're told that when we become committed to a relationship or we go into marriage or love, that we're going to lose ourselves, or we're going to lose our identity and who we are and our independence. And that is something that kind of steers us, especially now in this day and age. We want independence. We want to work. We want to lead, rooms. We want to own businesses. We want to do all these things. But we're told that commitment will stray us away from that. Commitment will take us away from the time and opportunity to focus on the things that we want. And I'm a deep believer in that that's not necessary.
It's the fear of commitment overshadowing.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so what is the common misconception for men to love?
This is my favorite question. I have so many, but the biggest one. One of the biggest ones is that there's been this narrative of men are only providers, and relationships are now evolving where it requires more than just providing. It requires emotional connectedness, emotional vulnerability, and a lot of times men aren't allowed that opportunity, which is preventing them from growing connection in a relationship, which is preventing, relationships from thriving further. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things, is that men are only supposed to be providers and not focus on the emotional commitment that relationships require. So that's one of them, and actually that's the biggest one. That's the most important.
Are there any others that stand out, both for men and women?
Yeah.
Because I think this is like the main thing. I think the thing about that can be tricky about that is that sometimes we don't have to express them. So I'm trying to take this.
Yeah. So I do want to elaborate on vulnerability, because a lot of times us as women, we have a hard time, especially when we're very driven, very independent, and strong-willed and strong-minded. We don't want to lose that. And so what happens is that when we get into relationships, or we get into commitment, we fight really hard for that. And what happens is that we come into this notion of compromise. Well, but it's about collaboration. And so we're not taught that. We're not taught that relationships are a collaboration and you're learning how to work together. We're taught that it's supposed to be compromise, a bending of the mind, a bending here and a bending of there, where you can develop a stance of understanding with each other and figure out, okay, well, you want this and need this, and I want this and I need this. What does this mean for us? And learning how to create something creatively and unique for the two of you and what it means and the mission that moves forward. So you don't have to lose your identity, your free will, or any of that. Because we try so hard to hold on to it. You're not going to lose that, especially if you're with someone that you are committed and passionate and respect, and they respect you. It's a mutual experience.
I save up to 25 cents a gallon every time.
We're going to circle back
It's
to
so
that.
easy to use. You just
But
upload a
before we
photo
jump
of your
into that,
receipt. If you aren't using it,
another
you're
question,
definitely overpaying for
personal
gas.
question. So did you at any point deem yourself to not be worthy of love or not worthy of a relationship or not ready? Was that ever a struggle for you? And I guess it sounds like this is something that you worked through before you went into coaching. So if you could elaborate on that and just what that journey looks like getting over that hump of feeling like I'm not ready, I'm not worthy, or maybe this opportunity will never, this will never happen for me. Love will never happen for me.
Yeah. So there was a time where I was like, no, I don't want to be a mom. I don't want to be a wife. I just want to just roam into the earth and just do amazing things. And it took me a long time when I sat in a space and realized that I wasn't happy. And at first I was like, okay, it's because I'm not ready or I don't want it. And these things are going to hold me down. But I realized that I was running from something. And the reality is I was really running from myself. I understood what marriage meant, and I understood what being a mother meant. And I didn't want any of those things. I didn't want that requirement of myself. I didn't want it on me, the responsibility. And so when I realized that, I had to figure out, well, what is it about that? And so I did a lot of work and realized that I'm happy that the folks up here were talking about the internal work that you did with yourself, because I realized that all of the pretend relationships that I was having, just with friends, with family, it was to avoid the relationship that I was having with myself. I didn't like to be in spaces alone, even though I loved all of my apartments that I lived in. I didn't like to be at work and sit in the office by myself. I didn't like any of that. And I filled my time with busy work, doing this, having 3-4 jobs, and because I didn't want to be home alone. And then one day I just sat there and I said, I need something new, I need something different. And I learned how to be by myself. And a lot of times you hear people say, learn how to be by yourself, but it wasn't even about sitting in the space. It was about learning how to work through all of the things that I was having issues with, right? Like, why do I not want to be by myself? And it was those thoughts. When we're by ourselves, sometimes we have to sit with our thoughts, we have to sit with our emotions, and I didn't want to do that. And it took a long time for me to say, you know what? I got to sit in this space. It doesn't feel good. I need to hold it, and I need to recognize that I am sad. I need to recognize that there is loneliness, and I need to realize what this loneliness is about. And it was a lot of trauma. It was a lot of family trauma that I had never really worked through. We're always told, push through it, push through it, push through it. And when you push through it, you don't get a chance to acknowledge it. You're running fast from it, and that's what I was doing. Yeah.
So what would you say, I'm going a little off script, but what would you say are some common questions that you would ask yourself? Because I think that this might be new territory for a lot of us. It was for me. So what are some questions you can ask yourself when you're in that period, when you realize, okay, I need to figure out how to spend time alone, get to know myself, figure out what's going on the inside? How do you do that? Where do you even start? It sounds good, but then you go home, you sit down, you give yourself an hour. What do you do? What questions do you ask? Do you journal? What does that look like practically? Yeah.
I think it's really different for everyone. I had to figure out what are the things I enjoy. And that was the thing. It's like I knew, I like this, I like that, but what are the things that I enjoy, and can I do those things by myself? So I actually picked up running, and I didn't enjoy running, but I like to work out. And so then during running, it was time alone. I could push myself. I could, sit and at this time I lived in Cleveland and I lived by Lake Erie, so I could run by the water, I could meditate, and I could, do yoga, and then think about like, okay, well, what am I running from? What pains am I trying to hide? And that's what it is. A lot of times we're trying to hide so many parts of ourselves that we can't even connect with others because we're hiding it. And if we can't connect with ourselves, we're never going to be able to connect with others because we're hiding who we are. And so that was what it was like, well, what am I hiding? What am I sad about? And so now that I'm trained, I didn't know it at the time, but now that I'm trained, it was more of, name the emotion to tame it. You have to name it to tame it. And so I was sitting there and I was just like, what am I angry about? What am I sad about? And what is all of this connected to? And how is this driving me and moving me in spaces that I don't want to be in? And after that, you could do that constantly. It's two what's and a how. What is this? What is it doing to me? And how is it impacting me right now?
Yeah, I like that. Two what's and a how. That's easy to remember.
That's easy to remember.
Yeah, so two what's. Sorry. What is this? What is it doing to me? And how is it impacting me? Okay. That sounds good. So that's what you do when you go and you sit down. You write those things down or you say them out loud. You try to acknowledge them. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So it seems like there was a point when you didn't want to be married, so it doesn't sound like you didn't deem yourself worthy of love, but you just didn't want it, and it was because you just didn't want connection with other people.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where, not that I didn't see I was afraid that someone else wouldn't deem me worthy of love, and that's what I was running from. I would get into these spaces, into like pointless relationships, intimate relationships, and there would be moments of when I would feel, if I cared a lot about that person, this fear would come up. And the fear would be, oh my God, they're going to leave me. If I do this, if I say this, they're going to leave me. And a lot of people, when I work with folks, they call it walking on eggshells. And that's what it was. I would fear that if I spoke my voice, or if I, really showed that I love these certain quirky things, because I'm a very quirky person, if I showed these things, that they wouldn't deem me worthy. And so those are another space, those are moments where I was just like, this isn't working for me. I'm not true to who I am, and I'm in these spaces and I'm sad. And I'm not supposed to be feeling sad in these happy moments with people that at one point I thought I'm smiling and laughing, but I'm really not inside. So, yeah.
So smiling and laughing on the outside, but on the inside, not so much.
Not so much, just sad. Some people call it like an emptiness. And a lot of people can relate to that emptiness. You're in a room full of people, and yet you feel so alone. Even when there's someone there that you still feel alone in that space. That was the emptiness that a lot of people feel. And at that time in my life, I was definitely feeling it.
Okay. And so the solution to this is to get to know yourself better, and dare I say also get to know who God calls you to be.
Yes.
Right? So that's the solution. It's more, so the emptiness it's not entirely that something's missing. It's really that, you have to fill that with figuring out who you are, loving that, and loving who God created you to be.
Right. There's nothing missing.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing missing. What it is that it's you are avoiding your relationship with yourself. The relationship with yourself is just your emotions. That's really what it is. And we have been taught to not acknowledge emotions, not acknowledge sadness, not acknowledge anger. We acknowledge it when it's out, but we don't acknowledge it when it's inside. And we don't acknowledge what's stemming it, what's feeding it, what created it in the first place. And so a lot of times we have to just sit there and we have to just be in the space and recognize that we are human. And in order for you to connect to others and yourself, is to acknowledge that your emotions, which are designed for you to connect to others. That's what emotions are for.
Okay. Is anyone learning anything from this? Anyone feeling this? I'm hearing a lot of silence. It sounds like,
yeah.
But I also know this is like very introspective stuff, so I get it. There was a lot of silence. So I'll be transparent. So LaTrease actually is not based in the DMV. She's based somewhere really far in Virginia.
Oh, no, I'm
Sort
in
of.
Maryland.
Oh, you are?
In Waldorf.
Okay, but we still always
That's
been
far,
on video
though.
chat.
Still
Yeah,
far.
Waldorf is kind of another state.
It's far.
It's kind of another state, but
Yeah.
but all of our meetings were on video chat, and there were many times that she would say stuff, and I would just be like,
Silent.
and she's like, "What do you think feeling?" And I'm like, "Well, I think." She's like, "I want to know what you're feeling," and I would just be like,
Yeah, the question is,
just
how is
silent.
this sitting
So,
with you?
"How is this sitting?" I hated that question.
How is this sitting with you?
But yeah, like I know that this stuff is deep, so I understand the silence, but I also just want to make sure you guys are with us. So are you guys with us? You guys are you guys are absorbing this? Can I get 2 snaps if you're absorbing this? All right, awesome. Awesome, awesome. I do have a few more questions before we bring it to the audience, and I do want to remind everybody this is a safe space. Feel free to ask questions. You can ask hypotheticals. It doesn't have to be something about you personally, but feel free to, ask questions. We're putting on this conference to make sure everybody gains something. So these days, and this was something that was referenced in the past panel, these days we hear a whole lot about needing to cut people off and about people being toxic. And you're toxic, I'm blocking you, don't talk to me. But is it ever too early to end a relationship?
Yeah.
And in this one, I'm speaking about a dating relationship. Let's say you're talking to someone. You may not even be in a relationship. You're talking to them, or maybe you're in a dating relationship with them. Is there such thing as cutting it off too early? And if so, how do we navigate that?
Yeah. I love the yellow flag reference, yellow flags and red flags. A lot of things that many times when I work with folks who are in the process of preparing to date, we talk about relationship tenets or relationship values. And these are values that are important to you. They guide you, they guide every decision that you make in your life, who you are as a person, how you interact with the world. And there's a few that's like, I value honesty. And the thing is honesty looks different for each and every one of us. So we break that down. What does honesty look like for you, and what does it mean for you? And how does it connect to you in this world? And once you understand your relationship tenets or your relationship values, then when you start dating other people and they kind of fall off on those things, then you can check and make sure it's a yellow flag, right? Like, hey, when you did this or when this happened, I felt a sense of, confusion or disconnection or whatever, we gotta work on that. We need to figure that out. And if they oblige or they respectfully have a conversation with you, you tell them about your boundaries, and they express theirs, and you two come to a mutual understanding, then, okay, yellow flag, we can move on. Now it's a green flag because now we know how to converse about boundaries and values. It's a red flag if you tell someone about your values and your boundaries and they dismiss them. Now that's an issue, and that's when it's about learning how to have a conversation in the beginning, because a lot of times what we do and what I learned from my personal self is I'll let it go this time. We understand so much that we get walked on. And that's the last thing you want to do, is be so understanding that all of your boundaries have now become a prairie field and there's no fences. And so it's very...
I see a lot of snaps on that one.
Yeah. So it's so important to be understanding, but you can be understanding in dialogue. You can be understanding by having a conversation about where they are and where your boundaries stand and how they understand your boundaries and how you understand theirs. And now if they dismiss them, they disrespect them, and they don't honor them, then that's a red flag, and I say cut them off.
Wow. All right, y'all. So I'm just gonna toss this out there. I know every January 1st, I see all these social media posts about how it's a new year, you're cutting people off. Please remember this conversation, all right? When you're making that list of people to cut off, all right? Yellow flags versus red flags. I love it. So it sounds like the answer is yes, there is a such thing as ending a relationship too early.
Yeah, I think that it is very important to just have the conversations, right? If something comes up, if you have the conversation, then that's, to me, in my opinion, that's another stepping stone on how you all should move forward. So if you let them know and you have a conversation about it, and everyone's on the same boat and everyone's moving on the same direction, then we're good. But immediately, if someone's disrespecting you and honoring and dishonoring your values, and you're very certain and confident in these, then I think it's okay. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for your time. I'm going that way.
All right. Amen. Amen. Understood that one. Okay. Another question, and I think we're going to start taking questions from the audience shortly. So if you have questions, please raise your hands. How do you heal from a relationship? We talked earlier about misconceptions, right, in our heads that men and women have. So how do you heal from a relationship that went wrong? How do you heal from a relationship that went in a way that was not as expected? Maybe something went wrong, and do it in a way that does not create a new misconception in your head?
Yeah, I like this question. I think one is about making sense of everything, making sense about the relationship that did happen, and taking it as an opportunity to learn. What can you take away from this relationship about who you are as a partner? What can you take away from this relationship about what you don't want in a relationship? And what can you do in the future to move forward? And were you the partner that you expected yourself to be, and that you would like to see? A lot of times we go in, once relationships end, we like to blame the other person. But I say we all have a role in the disconnection. Even in the cheating, it's not our fault that the person, or your fault that the person cheated, but we do have a role in the lead up to that. And whatever they did is their behavior. Whatever you did is yours. And it's about learning how to take accountability for yourself. And that's why I say my work is focused on the self-awareness. When you're aware about who you are in your relationships, then you are guided intentionally. You can guide yourself intentionally, and you are confident in who you are as a partner. A lot of times when the relationship ends, we're not confident. We're like, what did I do? What was the problem with me? We take it in completely, rather than saying, you know what? I need to be self-reflective, and I know that I was capable of doing this. I know that I did this, and at the end of the day, it was their loss on this part, but I know that next time I need to be a little bit more honest or whatever. So.
Awesome. That's definitely helpful. At this point, I just want to ask briefly, do we have anyone in the audience who has a question? I know we have Nander in the back with the mic. All right, so I think we'll take a couple, or we'll take any questions we have, actually.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, this question comes out. It's in regards to, I'm sorry. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I love communication. Like, if I send you a message, I need a response. But I don't want to always have to be the one sending or initiating things. So my question is, okay, so let me be specific. There's somebody I've been talking to for like a month. And I'm like, let us meet up. And the person, we've just had conflicting schedules. Okay, I'm like, I understand we're both busy. But it's been a month now. Unless I reach out, he doesn't reach out to me. But the moment I reach out, he connects. Mm-hmm. That's a challenge I've had with a few guys, and I'm trying to understand, how do you navigate, or how should I navigate that situation? I'm not angry. I'm just trying to understand, like, if I don't reach out to you, you don't reach. So I just want to like disconnect. But I'm like, should I let him know I'm disconnecting? Like, I'm just like, sure, like, anyway,
we understand what you're saying.
Okay.
We understand what you're saying. I just want you to know we all understand exactly what you're saying and how you feel. Okay.
One, thank you for sharing, because this is a personal question. So what I'm making sure that I hear you clearly is that communication is very important to you. And so the people that you decide to interact with, you're having communication with them, but you're the one who's initiating it mostly, or a lot. Okay, and now you're feeling a little confused on what you should do around that. Okay, if communication is very important to you, you know what it looks like, right? And you know what to expect, right? And you have not met these people, right? So if it's important to you and it's a value to you, then if they're not meeting your expectation around that, you can share it with them and say, hey, I like communication and I like for you to sometimes reach out. Or you can decide, you know what, this isn't that important to me, and I'll find someone else who values communication just the same way that I do. So,
And are any of those options better than the other?
I say it's up to you. You get to decide what's important for you, because what's not helpful is not stating your expectation. So doing nothing is actually, I think, is at anything, doing absolutely nothing is not helpful. When you share your expectations, and then at least they get to know you did on your part what you expect. You shared your expectations. They can move forward and decide if they want to do it or not. And if they decide that they want to do it or not, you get to decide what you want to do or not do. So.
Awesome.
Hear me? Oh. Kind of have a combo. Okay. So, my check. Okay. So based on my observation, because I'm at the age where I want to settle down and get married and everything. And based on my observation and just being out and about in the world and just talking to people, I actually prefer getting married to a Nigerian man. But I noticed that, unfortunately, yeah, okay, let's bring it back, okay. So I noticed a lot of Nigerian men in my family and community are unfaithful to their wives or girlfriends. It has created a psychological image that Nigerian men don't know how to be monogamous or to be, in a relationship with a woman. And I don't want to become a bitter, angry woman, because a lot of times I feel sad whenever when I talk to guys, just having conversation, and they'll be like, man, that girl, yeah, my girl is crazy. And I'm like, why do I always hear that? She's crazy. Because then it's like, okay, what did you do? And I don't want to become that, because my character and my dignity is very important to me, right, as a woman. And so my question is, should I explore a different ethnic group, or should I have a psychological shift? Wait, let's bring it back.
Safe question.
Let's bring it back.
Safe space.
Should I have a psychological shift with how I view Nigerian men? Because there aren't many healthy relationships that I've seen thus far in my community. Thank you.
Woo! I want to say thank you for sharing that. I cannot recommend if you go to another ethnic group or whatever. I can't recommend. That's up to you. But I do want to make sure that you make sense of what you're experiencing, because it makes sense when you see a group of people that you're so deeply connected to, and you want to build relationships and healthy relationships and commitment, and you don't see them valuing that. So it becomes disheartening, and it becomes discouraging. And so it makes sense, right? And so I can't tell you what you can do about going out of your group, but what I can say is you process that pain, and you make sense of it. And I mean, a lot of times there are faithful men. And I think what happens is...
And by the way, LaTrease is married to a Nigerian.
My husband is Igbo,
LaTrease is married to a Nigerian. Let's talk
Igbo,
about that.
So this is hard. So...
I had to talk to you.
Thank you. But what I can say is that there are faithful men, and it's just hard sometimes when our opinion of the opposite sex guides how we interact with them, and it guides how we view them. And so when we do hear people that we are close to, fulfilling that idea that we already have, it creates more discouragement. It creates more disappointment. And if not being bitter and angry is something that you value, then I think that shifting your view and not blaming it on an entire group but blaming it on those people. That's how they behave, and that's how they themselves as individuals. And then I do understand there's cultural pieces to that, because we all have these cultural pieces that we're like, oh, if we could shed that. But the reality is that we as people are not monoliths. So Nigerian men are not monoliths, and so that they are, faithful Nigerian men that exist. And so changing that narrative and that viewpoint that you have will help. And sitting with that and working through the pain that you have around that, because it is disappointing.
Yes. That's awesome.
Hi, I have a question about ghosting.
Okay.
Where do you draw the line between first impressions matter and understanding that, we all go through stuff, and I know sometimes I'm going through stuff, I don't want to communicate what I'm going through, I just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dealing with someone who, you started talking, you've been talking, and then they ghost, and then they just show up like 3 months later and exactly. And they want to it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm deeply sorry. They try to explain, and then where do you draw that line? Because you're scared, because I don't know if I can trust you to not disappear on me. I'm trying to be vulnerable. So, and I think this happens to a lot of people now,
Right.
but where do you draw that line to say, you've shown me who you are, so I'm going to keep this at the back of my head, or you know what, I'm not even going to bother. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that ghosting is, how you've shared it is I'm going through something and I don't know you well enough to share that I'm going through something. So it's usually a protection, and it's a sign of the inability to communicate vulnerably. And it's a distrust. And this isn't a good or bad thing. This is just exactly what it is. You don't know that person well enough to let them know what you're going through or to communicate that clearly. And so with some people, they don't know how to communicate, hey, I'm not into you. Some people, it's, hey, I'm going through a lot of stuff, and I don't know how to share that with you, and I don't know if I can share that with you. The thing is that you have to go back to, if you are the one who is ghosted, you have to, one, make up a decision once it happens if you are okay with letting that person come in and out. And if you decide that you're okay with that, then that's when again, it goes back to how understanding are you to the point where you don't have any boundaries. So if it's one time, it's like, okay, I understand, thanks for letting me know that you had something going on, okay. But if it keeps happening, then that's a sign to me that you don't have the ability to really share, and you don't feel trusting enough of me to be vulnerable enough, which, in my personal opinion, I think that if connection is important, then you're showing me that you don't want the connection. You're not willing to bend a little bit and move forward and be vulnerable enough, because vulnerability takes courage. And if you're not courageous enough to share with me, then you're not the one for me. Now, if you have the option of ghosting people, then I think that you need to do the work on learning how to effectively communicate. And there's a way that you could tell someone, hey, not right now, without you telling them, hey, my house is burning down, my credit score is low. You could just say, this is a rough time for me, and I'm going to be shutting off for a little bit. And I would hope that you are still there because I actually like talking to you, or within the meantime, I'm just going to be texting you, hey, and checking up on you. So it's about learning how to effectively share without sharing too much too soon.
All right, I wanted to know, how do you handle or combat rejection? So let's just say you're a man, and I have guy friends that they just are introverts or shy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you kind of combat rejection? Or if you're a lady and you follow a guy on Instagram and he doesn't follow back, just little stuff like that. Like, how do you kind of combat that or work through that?
Yeah, so rejection is really deep-seated in the need to be validated by others, and we find our worth in others. And the way to combat it is find your own self-worth. Once you figure out what you deem yourself as worthy and you deem yourself as valuable and important, then when someone says, hey, not you, then you can say, okay, thank you. I'll move forward from that. I'm not hurt by that because I understand that I'm not going to be for everyone. And you may not always be for me. So I appreciate you saving me the time, the fakeness, the whatever, and being honest with me up front. And so now I can find someone else, or I can spend time with someone else who values me the same way that I value myself. So I like that question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I had to think. Okay, sorry. I just had surgery, so please bear with me. Okay.
Sit down, please.
You can sit.
This wicked texting, where did it come from? So that's my number one question. Some people just, texting.
Oh,
They just
texting?
met you and they feel like they just be texting. And I'm like, I think I need a whole textbook on why you gonna be feeling like it's okay to be texting. You say you should pick up the phone and communicate, and then when I know you better, then we can get comfortable with texting and
Yeah.
Then again, somebody wanted me to ask a question as far as if you know that you have a connection with someone, and you're feeling each other as far as feelings and all that stuff, but the guy doesn't approach you, what do you do in that case? Thank you.
Okay. So I want to make sure I heard both your questions. What's up with texting? And then the next one is, what do you do if you're into someone but they're not approaching you? Okay, so in regards to texting, I was just talking to my husband about this, but the evolution of communication is forever evolving. And so what's happening now is that we're the most connected set of people. And so texting is a form of not being vulnerable, but being vulnerable. So it's easy to say, hey, I love you, I care about you via text, but it's very hard for me to look you in the eyes, look at your whole being and say that, because that's real human connection, and we're avoiding that. Now, if a person can call you or talk to you up front, I value that a lot more, because that requires being human and being in a space together, connecting. And so texting is just an avoidance mechanism to be able to share but not share and be fully present. Now, I think when it comes to approaching someone who's not approaching you but you're interested, I think it comes back to what's important to you and how you decide to do that. Some people believe like, hey, I'm gonna, be in this space to be seen, and I'm going to continue to focus on me. And if you want to approach me, then that's valuable. That's good. Some people believe like, hey, how you doing? So it just depends on what's important to you and how you want to be approached. And it sounds like you want someone to come to you. So that means that if they're not coming to you and you're focusing on yourself, then obviously maybe they're just not into you. And so it's just accepting that.
Hi, I wanted to know your opinion on introducing your significant other to your parents. So for me, if my parents don't like the person I'm dating, if my brothers don't like him, probably has to go. That's just for me. I don't like, conflict in my home, and because I'm very close to my family, I value their opinions. So my parents want me to introduce the person I'm dating to them as early as like a month or two in, because my dad has a spirit of discernment, so he's just like, you know what, the earlier the better, let me know so you don't waste any time. But for me, like, I want to be more like my older brother, who he dated his girlfriend for a whole year, and then he introduced her to our parents. So me and my other brothers, we knew about her. We had spoken to her on the phone a couple times, but we all met her after a year. And I personally am leaning towards that, because I don't want to just introduce Ade, Tolu, Tommy tomorrow.
Right.
I don't want to have a revolving door of men I'm introducing to my parents.
Right.
So I just wanted to know your opinion, earlier or later?
I think it goes back to your values. You value your family's opinion, but you're also valuing your experience, right? And I think it's about making sense of that. and understanding what is it about you waiting a little bit longer, because it's not just about a revolving door of men in front of your family. It's about, I'm just going to throw this out there, and you can throw it back at me if it's not right. It's about having significant time with someone and getting to know them so that they can meet the most important people in your life. And so I wouldn't say it's a time frame. It's about when you feel like this person is fit enough to see the people that are most important to you in your life. And I don't like to tell people to go against their family's values. I really don't like to do that. So it's about understanding why your father has that perspective and that desire to meet them sooner, but also trying to figure out how you can balance your need to say, you know what, this person just isn't a good fit to meet my family right now. And so I hope that answered your question, because it's a very personal question. I definitely don't like to go against family, but also don't like for people to go against what's important to them. So it's about understanding what's important to you too. Did I answer that? Yeah, I'm in the space of not telling people what to do with their life. I can just tell you what to think about. And you have to make sense about that with yourself. And these are one of the things that you have to sit with yourself and say, you know, what's important to me?
That was awesome. Do we have any other? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll take a seat. But a special shout out to all the men in the room that are still here. A lot of respect for you, Young. I heard some people in this area say men can be faithful. Nigerian men can be faithful. The question that I have is this: are there resources? What I found is I've met some amazing men, some Christian, some non. And in recent history, there's a serious battle, especially men in their 20s and 30s and above, and some women too, with this pornography struggle, because their sex drive is so high. They don't want to be going out with different women, but they're finding this struggle they have to, for lack of a better term, release in some way. So now I'm finding, okay, as a Christian woman, I'm interested in dating you. You're struggling with this. And I'm speaking to someone that doesn't want to engage in this. Have you counseled, spoken to, been around men that have shared any resources or tips in terms of this struggle in attempting to maintain purity and attempting to be in a healthy relationship and attempting to wait until marriage, but at the same time, I don't know, are there resources or tips that men have shared with you that are helpful? That's the question.
Well, usually the men that I work with are clients, so they wouldn't share resources with me. But what I have gauged is that this is a very sensitive subject for men to experience and understand, especially when you are a follower of Christ. And so a lot of times and we do this a lot, and there is shame around sex and sexuality and understanding that. And so what I think is that it's a personal decision, just as many, we've had folks that say, you know, I've abstained. And so it's their journey to take on. And a lot of times, sometimes I think as partners or someone we're dating, we want to change their journey. If that's the journey that they've decided to go on, you have to decide, how do I feel comfortable being on this ride with them? Because you can't change anyone. I think that's one of the misconceptions that a lot of times, that we believe that we can love someone unconditionally and move forward so much so that they'll change into the person we want them to be, instead of allowing them to grow into the person that they need to be for the relationship or even just for themselves. And so I want to honor your concern around this, because it can be, sometimes a lot of times porn can interfere in connection and intimacy with the two human beings that are in the relationship. But if it's to the point where it's addiction or things like that, you have to find like maybe a sex therapist, or even there's a porn like anonymous like group or something like that, a sexual addictions group. But I don't like to say that it's addiction just because someone may be watching it. It's their flesh, it's their, it's their decisions, and that's their walk, and especially if they're a follower of Christ, and that's their work that they need to do with with God. So I hope I answered your question well enough. Okay.
I think we have a few more questions.
Hello, everyone. So my question is, hi, I'm Diane. Hi, Diane. So my question is, what advice do you have for someone who's tagged as being too much? A woman who's supposedly too much, not in the sense that she does a lot, but take me, for example. I go into a room and I like knowing everyone.
And you shine.
Yeah, I just want to say hi, hello.
Mhm.
My mom finds that it's too much, like it's a problem. I've been told a lot that I need to tone it down. But I feel if I do that, that's taken away from who I am. So what advice do you have for a person like me?
Continue to shine. And I mean, the thing is that the interesting thing that you asked this question, but I saw you moving around and you did shine. And if you are not true to who you are, and you will never be happy. And I think that was the point of the journey that I was talking about, is that sometimes we hide so much of ourselves out of fear of rejection, or out of fear of, abandonment or not being accepted, that we actually are numbing ourselves from ourselves, and we're not happy. And so continue to be who you are, as long as you're having your safe and healthy boundaries, and you're very happy about who you are as a person. Someone will, just for you, you will be happy. And then if there's a relationship, and you're here because relationships matter to you, then you will connect to people who value that shine and that bright star that you are.
I think we have an.
I have a question now. Girl, please keep shining. Be like me, okay? Please don't. Okay.
You shine too, yeah.
Scratch that. 2 questions, actually. I'll try to shorten them. I wanted to piggyback on Tedge's question, but just change it a little bit. So in the setting of friends, there's this thing where we feel like when you're dating somebody, you should do it in silence for a minute, like date for like a certain window, and then you bring your friends in. What's your take on that? Because I've noticed that when you do that, the time you have made that decision and become resolute on that person, when you then bring them out, your friends start to pull receipts and tea on this person, like low-key crazy, low-key everything. Like, how do you handle that, and how do you find a balance between what people have said and what you found? That's one. The second one, sorry.
No, I know you have multiple questions. I know.
Sorry. The second one would be, at what point in a relationship would you introduce the difference between honesty and transparency? Because honesty is you giving a truthful response to a question being asked. Transparency is volunteering that information. At what point in time in a relationship would you bring that out?
Okay, so for your first question, because I don't want to lose it, your first question about balancing friends and the person that you're dating. A lot of times we have to recognize, one, why are we hiding the person that we're dating from these people? And so it's about understanding the reason why you're hiding it from these people. I understand your reason for kind of keeping the person that you're dating back was because you wanted to kind of make sure that your family's opinion was valid and was important and upheld and honored. And the thing is with friends, if you have friends that are always pulling out receipts, you have to question your friendships. I mean, I understand sometimes our friends want the best for us, but sometimes it's an intention under there that you have to kind of sift through. Because if my friends are constantly telling me or pulling out things about a person out of care, and I'm listening to their opinion every time, and I'm not in a relationship because of the information, then I'm feeding into their negative bad habits, which is you're always pulling receipts. What's pulling you to want to figure this information out about the person that I'm with? So in my opinion, I think your friends don't trust your taste. I said in my opinion, your friends don't trust your ability to choose a mate. Because if they feel as though they have to constantly...
It's getting touchy. It's getting touchy.
I mean, the thing is that all well, nice, kind, caring behaviors, there's generally some like underlying selfish behavior in that. And what is your friend gaining from you, from telling you about how bad this person is that you're with? Why wouldn't they give you the opportunity to discover it for yourself? That's something you gotta sit with.
I told you I hated that question. How's it sitting with you? How's it sitting with you? It's not
Yeah.
sitting, I know.
And the next question, and I lost it. What was the last question? Oh, okay. So I think it's about you worrying about your level of honesty and being open. What happens is it's about a give and take, right? So I'm honest, and then I share a little bit, I share a little bit more information, and then that person comes. So it's just this movement, this dance, I want to say, that people do. And if at any point you have to understand how important transparency and honesty is to you, and when you decide that, okay, this person isn't being transparent enough with me. But the important thing is to recognize what's leading this. Is it my inability to trust others? Or is it I am being very vulnerable with this person and I just don't feel connected enough? Sometimes we are transparent so that they can move closer to us because we want to feel connected. That's what transparency does. It connects us. And if you're feeling that way, then it's a moment to stop and then be honest and say, you know what, or transparent, say, I'm sharing so much about myself and I don't feel like I'm knowing that much about you. I don't feel like we're at a space where we're equally transparent with each other. And I just want to make sure that we're close enough, or this relationship is, and I want to let you know that this is important to me. And if it's not important to you, then we need to figure out how to move with this. So, does that answer your question? I'm sorry? I think it just depends on the person. Some people are okay with sharing. And it's about how you handle transparency. The thing is, a lot of times we think, oh my goodness, they're sharing too much. I have to run. But if this person is confident enough to share with you, I think the thing about vulnerability is about vulnerable listening and holding and vulnerable sharing. And so if someone's vulnerable enough to come to you and share something so important, it's a gift. Hold it and say, you know what, dang. This was so important that they shared this with me. I am honored about that. But a lot of times we're like, oh my goodness, you're telling me all this stuff, drop and run. And so we need to be human and understand the importance of transparency, and if someone is sharing in our minds, in our perception too soon, just value it.
Well, how's that sitting with you?
It's
that one's sad. Okay. Do we have any? Oh,
I did. All right. Stand up. Hello. Name is Bryant. Hello, everyone. All right. Sorry. All right, first, I want to apologize for coming late. I had some tire issues, and
no one even knew you were late.
Oh, that's why you're clapping. I thought you said I'm talking too much. I said, oh, So, my 2 cents. In the middle? Right there. Perfect. All right, so, and I don't know if this was talked about earlier, but I'm gonna talk about this, throw it out there and answer my question. So, I'm someone who, by the grace of God, has been able to understand who I am identity-wise, and what my calling is, and necessarily how I'm always lending a helping hand. And a lot of people who know me here personally can know that I love I love extending a helping hand. So I've also realized, and you can kind of look around the room and tell this as well too, that a lot of times women are a lot more vulnerable when it comes to their faith and talking about their faith than men are. And I don't know what it is, but again, I'm a man, so maybe I can try to understand it one day. But again, so I come across a lot of times where I run into situations where God may put a word on my heart, and I just happen to see someone on Twitter, something like that, going through a situation, and I reach out to them. And that brings back to the point that I've heard a lot of times that I have a lot of female friends, right? And it's not in the sense where I'm trying to have my way with all of them, but it's just a lot of times that people come to me, especially in the undergrad, when they need help. They're going to situations with their boyfriends, family issues, they need prayer, they need me to fast, they need me to go to whatever they need me to do. I have been privileged to be able to help do those things. But then it's like, it goes back to some kind of way, because in my mind, I like to say that I don't really care what people think about me, in the sense where, like, being confident in who I am identity-wise, but I'm still human, so I still kind of have that vulnerability in the back of my mind, like, hey, what does this person think? Because my question is this: do you feel as though that there should be a balance between me? Because I've heard that, and my fear is that because I associate myself with, you know, lending a helping hand to a lot of people of the opposite sex, that may scare women away and says, oh, he has too many girlfriends, or he has too many girl best friends, or blah, blah, blah. And that could possibly stop me. I'm not saying stop me from meeting somebody, but necessarily just stop me from gravitating towards people, you know, or necessarily, you understand what I'm trying to say. So yeah, so that's kind of my question, yeah. So thank you.
Okay. One, right, if you are a helpful person and you go out of your way to help people and you're confident and you're okay with that, I say continue to do that. I will say this, though. It's important to reflect on your desire to help so much. A lot of times, and this, I'm just throw it out there, just throw it back at me if it doesn't fit. Sometimes people who help so much, they recognize what it's like to not have help, and so they don't like to see people hurting. And so they go they go out of their way to help so many hurting people because they know what it's like to hurt. And to compensate or to heal their hurt, they go and try to heal other people's hurt. So if that sits with you. Oh, let me answer the other one. Okay, and so the thing is that if you make sense of your experience and your intent and your desire to help others, I wouldn't say dim your light and stop helping, but I will say is make sense of what's driving you. And the thing is that if someone values the way that you help, it wouldn't matter about, you know, who you're helping or anything like that, because that's as important to them as well. So you want to find or spend time with people who value helping others. What I will say is that it's about the boundaries. We talked about boundaries earlier, and it's about understanding how are your boundaries looking when you are helping people, right? And when you're in a relationship and a partner comes and they share with you, hey, you know, you're texting or you're doing this or you're doing these things, I feel uncomfortable. It's about having a dialogue around that and making sense of that and honoring it. Or if it's not something that you want to do, you can exit, say thank you, and exit. But it's about making sense of that. So don't change because people want you to change. Evolve and grow because you've decided and made sense of everything that you need to make sense of. Okay, so
session, I've learned a lot. Definitely, even everything you said on emptiness and just that feeling. Mm-hmm. I've never actually heard it been said out loud and understood it, and so it was awesome. I'm really receiving a lot. I do have a question though. So to paint my story, I guess, I've never actually been in like a serious relationship. I got saved at a young age, and so friendships with guys I've had, the mentality I always have is like, you know, I'm dating to one day, someday, you know, get married. And so I'd rather, you know, start a relationship with intention rather than just, I want to date you, I want to date you, I want to date you. And so I think because of that, I don't have that kind of lovey-dovey type of like excitement for relationships, if that makes sense. Like, so, and I'm at that age where we're all talking about relationships, our friends are getting in relationships, and it's like, yeah, this is exciting. But for me, I'm not like excited. I'm learning a lot, but I do understand that after that honeymoon phase is a lot of work. And so I guess the question is, how do you deal with anxiety and kind of an aversion of being in a relationship because you can't get past everything I've heard about the negative or hard work that relationships actually are after the honeymoon stage?
Well, thank you. The thing is Anxiety is just worry, concern, and fear. And so you've already kind of stated what your fear is, what your concern is that I'm going to get into this relationship and it's going to be hard. And so what I would say is work through that. What is the hard part, right? What is the hard part that you're worried about? And a lot of times some people are like, well, I don't handle conflict well. I don't want to get in arguments. I don't want to have deep conversations. It's really about dissecting it thinner and understanding what your actual fears are and worries are around it being hard. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right, I think we're going to take just one final question. Maybe two.
Hi.
Hi.
So my question is, do you think that God can potentially send us a mate who we're not attracted to? Because there's this guy, he's amazing, and from what I know, and my mom, she has the gift of prophecy, and she's like, I just want to let you know, girl, that's your husband, but I'm not attracted to him at all, and he's like constantly like trying to pursue me, and I feel so bad because I've like tried to like make the barriers, but I don't want to be shallow at the same time, and he's not getting it. Like every single time I've asked him, like now he's like, oh, I'm trying to take you to an island for your birthday. I'm like, what? But
it's an island though. It's an island though.
An island?
Yes. But yeah, like I keep hearing a lot of people say like, well, I wasn't attracted to my husband and this and that, and I'm like, that's cool, sis, but like I didn't want that to be me. So I guess I'm just like, I want to know how to deal with that fear, because I think that when my mom said that, like I was excited about like marriage since I was young, and then like that kind of brought a fear because I trust her word in God, even though I know I need to like, Lord Jesus, like what you saying to me. But I feel like I've like gained this fear now where I'm like a little nervous about my husband, because I'm like, Lord, I don't want it to be him, but at the same time, if this is who you have for me, like I'm not trying to not be appreciative. Like I just don't know what to do. Like I'm struggling, and I can't stop thinking about it. So he just keeps popping up in dreams and everything. I'm driving and like I just, I need, please, I don't know.
Well, one thing I know that if the person is meant for you, there wouldn't be confusion. And so is this physical attraction, or what type of attraction are you talking about?
It's physical, like he dressing like my grandpa. Like it's just like, you know, and me, I'm a person, I actually like love accents, but I can't understand his specifically. So when he's like, no, I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I genuinely don't have a problem with accents, but I can't understand him that well. So it's like, it's hard for me to connect. Like,
I think you already answered your own question. I think you're having a hard time is because your mom has prophesized this person. So your real disconnection or your angst is around kind of your relationship with your mom and not honoring her vision. So make peace with that, because you say you're not attracted to him. You can't force something, right? And if you force something, you're not going to be happy. It's about, again, you're not being true to yourself. Now, when we talk about attraction, it's also important to go back to your tenets. What's important to you? Now, if this person meets those tenets and they're still not, you're still not physically attracted, then they're still not the person for you, and that's okay. And we have to recognize that we have to be okay with certain things. I think it's about recognizing, okay, am I not attracted to this person for super shallow reasons, yet they're still an okay person, but you've already shared, I don't understand them, there's no connection, there's nothing about this person that I can be attracted to.
Amen. And if you don't mind, I just want to mention a scripture that, I don't know the scripture reference. Hopefully one of the pastors could help me, but I always remember the stories. There's a story in the Bible where there was a prophet that was sent. You were thinking about it? Can you shout out where it's from so everybody can read it? Okay. Yes. There was a prophet who was sent on a journey. God gave him a very specific instruction. An older prophet, who this younger prophet respects, came and told him to do something else. So he decides to go on the journey that the older prophet told him to go on. And he was mauled by a bear or a lion, one of those two. It's in Kings. And then the older prophet buries him and honors him because he's a prophet. There are a lot of stories in the Old Testament that the first time I read them, I was just like, what is the point of this? But it is so important to understand that all of us who accept Christ as our Lord and Savior have the Spirit of God living in us, and we have access to hear what he says to us. And it's also important to know that all of us are imperfect, and sometimes we'll make mistakes, which means that no matter what anybody says to you, which is very similar to what Pastor Wally, Pastor Yemisi, the other panelists said earlier, if someone says, I'm your husband, wait till, God has to confirm that to you. He's not the God, he's not the God of confusion, right?
Right.
So similarly, this could go either way. Your mom might be right, and that confirmation may be coming later, or it may not be correct, right? And that's where this turmoil is coming from. Be okay with being patient. Be okay with waiting for time. Our lovely pastors somehow were friends for a whole year before they got that confirmation that they were, for each other. And they were willing to go through that period of patience and waiting to hear, right? But at the same time, remember that story? And that was prophet to prophet. It's not like, an older brother or whatever. The other person was also a prophet.
Right.
And who led him astray. So, yeah. Yes. Amen.
Thank you for adding that.
Amen. On that note, oh man, we're running tight on time, y'all. We're going to take one more question.
Hello. Oops.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Muyiwa. Hi. So my question is concerning cheating and how relationships can survive from that. And this kind of, I believe, is different between before marriage, when you're dating, and after marriage. Because after marriage, you've already made a covenant between husband, wife, and God, so that makes things more complicated. But they say trust can take a lifetime to build and can be broken, in an instant. And so my question is, one, is it really even possible to build that trust back after cheating has happened, when there could be a lot of insecurities and concerns? Well, is he or she going out? Is she now going with someone else? And if it's possible, what kind of steps can be taken to actually build that trust again?
So this is on the context that the couple is not married, correct? Both, okay. So one, I will say that it's definitely possible for the couple to overcome affairs or, step infidelity. It requires a mutual effort and work. So in the marriage, it's a little bit different because there's, like you said, there's this covenant, and it's very important to recognize that the couple is in it together and they want to work through this, and they've made the commitment to each other to do so. So it's very possible it's going to take a lot of work and to overcome that. Now in dating, it's also possible it's going to be a little bit harder because they're not connected through that intense of a commitment, but it's possible. But the underlying thing is if both people want to heal and do the work, then anything is possible to heal from together. The steps to do that is you have to see a professional. You have to work through that with a therapist or a relationship specialist or someone who is trained in infidelity, because there is a lot of betrayal. And a lot of times, and I've worked with a lot of couples around this, is when you've been cheated on, the person who has been betrayed is like PTSD. You have nightmares about it. You have these daydreams about it. You're full of anxiety, and so you have to heal from that. And a lot of times, it's easy for the person to say, I don't want to deal with this, and I don't want to be in this relationship, and that's okay, because that has made a space for them that they no longer have that foundation of trust. But if they're willing to do the work, they have to deal with the anxiety that comes along with that, the PTSD that comes along with that. And it's hard to say that, but it's very similar. I have worked with so many couples where they've had nightmares around their partner cheating, and it's very sad. But they've also said, you know what, but I want to be in this relationship because my care and commitment to this person is very important. And I would say that if you're single and you're going in and you're in a relationship and you haven't made the commitment, I think it's important to take the time to do an evaluation on if this person really is the person for you. Go back to your relationship tenants. Go back to how they've respected boundaries and honored. So look at the red flags again. This is an opportunity to go back and do an evaluation and say, hey, do I really want to be in this? And you can choose right then and there. And as far as marriages, it's very important for them to do an evaluation together and say, you know what, where were we half-stepping along the way? Where did we make the mistake? Where did I make the mistake? Where did you make the mistake?
Sorry, guys. We don't want to keep you guys too far beyond release on us. We will be wrapping up the session. And if anyone has any questions afterwards, I'm sure you can speak with LaTrease afterwards. And everyone is tagged. All the speakers are tagged on social media. You can connect with her afterwards as well. But on that note, I just want to say thank you so much, LaTrease, for coming on out.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. We learned so much. We delved into some uncomfortable topics. But the session is over, so you guys can take a deep breath. Breathe it back out. I know these are some uncomfortable topics.
And just
let it sit with you. But yeah, I really want to say thank you so much for coming.